found a shortcut through a hedge maze.
Why, you little? No, go easy on the wee one. His father's gonna go crazy and chop them all into haggis.
What's haggis?
Boy, you read my thoughts. You've got the shinning.
You mean shining.
Shh, you wanna get sued? Now look, boy, if your dad goes gaga, you just...
Stay away from me, Homer!
Give me the bat, Marge! Give me the bat! Give me the bat! Come on! Give me the bat! Give me the bat! Scaredy cat! Yeah.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cinema Psych podcast, where psychology meets film. Today's episode is going to be maybe a little spooky, maybe a little crazy, maybe a little, Spoilers ahead, of course. Today's film is Stanley Kubrick's seminal masterpiece of Stephen King's novel, The Shining. So good. It's such a good film. Probably my favorite Jack Nicholson performance. So good. I mean, he's very chilling in it, right? He's very chilling. The film also stars Shelley Duvall in, I suppose, one of her more notable roles. She was Olive Oil in Popeye, right? She was Olive Oil in Popeye. Danny Lloyd plays a character named Danny. Shocking. And then there are a few other random people in it, but it's really just Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and Danny Lloyd just doing really good character drama in the creepiest friggin' hotel ever. So the basic summary, and we'll get into more of this as we go through the episode. Basic summary is that a guy is a writer, and he is employed by a hotel that closes over the wintertime because it's the roads become impassable. And there's something wrong with the hotel. It was built on a Native American burial ground. This is made apparent in the beginning of the film, and then creepy stuff comes out after that. It's a really good horror film. It really is. It's a thriller. It's a horror film. It's so good, and I can't wait to get into the psych concepts that are in. And by the way, this episode is not going to be exhaustive on those psych concepts. There's no way we could possibly do that. I also wanted to mention that I'm going to be playing scenes from the film, and I wanted to let everyone know that some of these scenes might actually be a little disturbing, especially the Here's Johnny scene. I have to play that. I think I'm contractually obligated to play that scene in reference to this movie, but it does have some really gnarly music, and Shelley Duvall is screaming. So, and this might be the case for other clips too. So I just wanted to put out that general warning for the content in this episode. So let's get right into it. My guest host today is Dr. Sully Coleman. Sully got his Ph.D. in biobehavioral health at Pennsylvania State University. He's currently a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Vermont Center on Behavior and Health, where he does smoking cessation research. Ooh, I should have you guest lecture. Anyway, sorry. In general, he's interested in studying how different characteristics of people, such as differences in personality, affect stress and health behavior. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention before Sully jumps in here is that Sully and I are alums of Cal State Northridge, CSUN, and of Dr. Abe Brutchick, who I'm also trying to get on the show one day soon. And I don't know if Sully remembers this, but the first time I met him was as a first semester graduate student in Abe's lab, not knowing a single soul because I was a bad undergraduate. When you were an undergraduate, and the first time I met you was Abe was like, "Oh, just go participate just go help out Sully and Simon, I believe it was, on the red pen study." And
That's
so
right.
I jumped in there one day in that one big room that had a bunch of cubicles in it, and I was like, "Yeah, so Abe told me to come over here," and it was good because you and Simon were undergraduates at the time, and so you were like, "Yeah, Dr. Rutchick, blah blah blah," and I'm like, "Yeah, he told me to come and help you," and that was the first time I met you.
I do remember that. Actually.
You do?
I remember
Okay.
that, really, man. The red pen study, dude. That's right. The object priming study.
Yeah.
That's right, man. Yeah. Wow.
Well,
that's so funny.
In any case, Sully, welcome to the show.
Alex, thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I've been watching your I would say filminess over the last decade, and I've always enjoyed your deep takes and your sense of humor on Facebook with respect to movies. It's really good, and your taste in movies is also amazing.
Thank you, man.
Because we
Thank
are
you.
talking about a really good movie today. But before we jump into that, I did want to get your thoughts on what I've been watching so closely for a decade now. No stalking, I suppose. Is your thoughts on film in general? And if you do, I know you're a postdoc, and I don't know how much teaching you actually do as a postdoc in your current position. But if you get the chance to be teaching again, would you use film in your teaching?
Yeah. No. So I don't do so much teaching right now as a postdoc, but I actually started out kind of in film school. That was initially my major, and my
That's
intention
wild.
Yeah, isn't that kind of funny?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the route that I was going. And I took a few classes as an undergrad, and I kind of decided it wasn't for me. So I changed my major to psychology. But in the teaching that I have done, I like to use examples from film.
Okay.
Yeah, so like to kind of, I guess, illustrate specific psychological conditions or processes, which is kind of like what we're going to be doing today. Or, sometimes I'll also use film to maybe represent larger theories of personality.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think I have some data to crunch through, but I think the vast majority of people who use film in their pedagogy do something similar, where it's just like, we're not going to do the whole movie, but we are going to take chunks out of here and there. Any particular films that you like using other than the one we're going to talk about today? Any other films?
Yeah, so like in the past, I've used Bad Santa as a representation of social learning theory, and I like it because the film contains several examples of modeling bad behavior. And Billy Bob Thornton's character even says in the very beginning of the movie, my dad was this a-hole, and he basically describes himself. He's like, but he did teach me how to crack a safe. So it's just it's a good example of modeling bad behavior and vicarious learning. So yeah.
That's awesome. I should actually go back to that. Now, you are originally from Vermont, yes? Yes. So was film school what brought you out to California?
So I went down to Florida.
Oh yeah, those Floridians, they're very well known for their film schools, yes?
Totally, man. Orlando. Yeah. Orlando was the up and coming Hollywood, man. We were Hollywood 2.0.
Oh, Lord.
No, but it was so my intention was actually to go to community college for a while, get my prereqs out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up in California, and I was going to try to keep going with it, but it just was not.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, that's where we met. You know what the scene is like out there.
Yeah. Choosing Cal State Northridge was probably the economical choice, moving to California.
Dude, I love that school, man. That was so much fun.
No, it was good. It was good. It was fun reminiscing with Angela a few episodes ago. We did that.
That was a fun show.
Yeah, it was on Scream. And speaking of other horror films, we are talking about probably one of the better horror films. And from my perspective, I'm not a big horror guy, as I've mentioned several times on this program. But The Shining is actually probably top 5 horror film for me. Top 5 thriller for me. Nice. And I know it's actually kind of polarizing, but it really is like really well done filmmaking. So what made you choose, other than all of that, what made you choose The Shining for our discussion?
I mean, I agree with you. It's one of my favorite movies as well. I've seen it so many times. And the thing that makes it one of my favorite movies is I can continuously revisit it and always find something new and always find it thought-provoking. And it's just fun to like talk about it with people, and everyone has a different perspective, and it's just one of my favorite movies. So
one of the YouTube channels that I follow on film stuff, New Rockstars, in case anybody is interested, they do a lot of nerd stuff, but one of the things that one of the guys did recently was on The Shining, and they released it last month because of Halloween coming up, and people need good things to talk about and watch and whatever on YouTube. But it was a 20-minute long dissection of missable details and connections and things like that. At no point did they mention our main topic tonight, which is why what we're doing and the kind of research that you've been involved with previously and currently, and that is narcissism.
Yeah, man.
What a time to talk about narcissism.
Oh my God. It's so... Oh, we could go down so many rabbit holes with that, but we're not going to.
So Sully, do you want to define what narcissism is, and if you will, narcissistic personality disorder?
Sure thing. Yep. So, all right, there are a lot of different perspectives on what narcissism is, and unfortunately, there is still some debate over the operationalization of the construct and what the primary components of it are.
Okay.
What I like, what I think is the most parsimonious definition of narcissism is it involves 2 primary components, right? There's grandiosity, which is the motivational component of narcissism. And it's basically an overriding need for recognition and admiration to support and enhance this sort of inflated self-concept, this inflated sense of self-worth, self-importance, right? And then you have vulnerability, right, which is the regulatory component. That's the second primary dimension of narcissism. And that has to do with an inability to regulate your self-concept and your behavioral and emotional reactions when grandiosity is threatened.
Okay. Only when grandiosity is threatened?
When grandiosity or self-interest are threatened.
Okay.
So some of the emerging, I guess, theories of narcissism, like the narcissism spectrum model, for example, posits that, at the core of narcissism, like the sort of anchor of grandiosity and vulnerability, you have entitlement, this entitled self-interest, right?
Sure.
And then like the higher in narcissism a person is, the easier it is to move back and forth along that spectrum from grandiosity to vulnerability. But basically what I was taught is that grandiosity and vulnerability are not mutually exclusive. They can sort of oscillate or co-occur within an individual at varying degrees, right?
And would you say they feed each other?
They could. I mean, you could just be like consistently high in grandiosity, right? You might never have that sort of deflated downswing. But I think that they kind of feed off of each other. Yes.
Interesting. That is, I actually, honestly, wouldn't be able to tell you what the definition of narcissism is from a psychological perspective. So it's surprising to me that there is debate on that right now. Amongst y'all.
No, that's it. Yeah, you'll see like all of these different constructs that are brought up in the literature. You'll see things like normal narcissism versus pathological narcissism. You'll see grandiose versus vulnerable narcissism, where that school of thought kind of treats them as separate constructs or like different subtypes. You'll see overt versus covert narcissism. But really, grandiosity and vulnerability can be expressed overtly, like in our observable behaviors, or covertly, like in our private thoughts and fantasies, right?
Yeah.
So, there's just a lot of stuff out there. But actually, that then brings us back to what you were saying earlier. So what narcissistic personality disorder is.
Sure.
That is when narcissism is so high and it pervades so many different domains of a person's life that it actually causes functional impairment, right?
Okay, yeah.
It causes problems in your relationships, it causes problems at work, et cetera, et cetera. And a person has to meet specific criteria in order to get that diagnosis.
Yeah. And I'm curious, and I know that you are not a clinician. I'm curious if a person, if diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, would have the self-awareness to operate within a treatment.
I'm not sure about that. What I've read is that like if a person comes to therapy and they're questioning whether they might fit a diagnosis of NPD, that can actually be an indicator that maybe they don't have it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's a person with real NPD is going to have a very hard time with self-reflection, right? They're going to have a really hard time.
Basically, my question, like, is that even something? I mean, that's. I would imagine it's an empirical question. That just, I mean, it's hard to, you can't find these people, and then when you do find them, they're gonna be like, nah.
No, actually, yeah. So as I understand it, people with NPD normally present with some other kind of problem, right? They'll present because they're referred by the court system, or they'll present because their spouse is threatened to leave them if they don't go to therapy, or maybe they're depressed because they're going through a divorce, or maybe they're struggling with some kind of substance use disorder, something like that. And then the NPD kind of shows itself over the course of their treatment for the other thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I would also be, I mean, you did mention some other psych disorders there. So I'm curious, is NPD potentially comorbid with other personality disorders like antisocial personality disorder?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Antisocial personality, borderline personality.
Got it.
It's usually not usually, I shouldn't say that. It's highly comorbid with other personality disorders, substance use disorders. It's definitely there.
Okay. And so bringing us back to the characters in the movie that, characters would have potential personality issues.
Yes.
Jack Nicholson playing Jack. Of the three main characters, I got to tell you, Shelley Duvall got the short end of the stick. She has to go by a different name.
Wendy.
That's
right. You're right. That's right, man. That's a good point.
Yeah, Jack and Danny go by their first names.
Oh my God. I'm just realizing that. That's a good point.
Yeah. So, we'll get to that. The Shelley Duvall role in just a minute, but we do need to talk about Jack. And to reference the previous episode, I am Jack's unrelenting rage.
Yeah. So I think that first of all, I think in The Shining, it doesn't really matter if there's a supernatural element or not. Like I've heard both sides of that coin. I think that regardless of whether there are actually ghosts in the hotel or not, you can still evaluate Jack in terms of his narcissism, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things that you need, first of all, as evidence of grandiosity, is you need to look at that need for recognition and admiration, right? So think about the ballroom scene, right? So that's a pretty key scene.
I'm going to go ahead and play that here.
Good evening, Mr. Torrance. Good evening. Hi, Lloyd. Been away, but now I'm back.
Good evening, Mr. Torrance. It's good to see you.
It's good to be back, Lloyd.
What'll it be, sir?
Hair of the dog that bit me.
Bourbon on the rocks.
That'll do her.
No charge to you, Mr. Torrance.
No charge?
Your money's no good here. Orders from the house.
Orders from the house.
Drink up, Mr. Torrance.
I'm the kind of man likes to know who's buying their drinks, Lloyd.
It's not a matter that concerns you, Mr. Torrance. At least not at this point.
Anything you say, Lloyd. Anything you say.
I'm so sorry, sir. Oh, dear. I made an awful mess of your jacket, sir.
Oh, that's all right. I've got plenty of jackets.
I'm afraid it's avocado, sir. It tends to stain.
Avocado, is it?
Yes, sir. Look, I think the best thing is to come along to the gentleman's room, sir, and we'll get some water to it, sir.
Looks as though you might have got a spot of it on yourself there, Jeevesy, old boy.
But that doesn't matter, sir. You're the important one.
Awfully nice of you to say. Of course, I intended to change my jacket this evening before the fish and goose soiree.
So in that ballroom scene, for example, right? Like, it doesn't really matter if, he's having some kind of grandiose fantasy in that moment or if he's actually interacting with spirits, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, he is in his street clothes at this formal ball, right? And he's kind of dancing and showing off, and he's kind of got this swagger, right? And he interacts with Grady, who is the old keeper of the hotel. Grady brings him into the bathroom. As he's bringing him into the bathroom, he says, "You're the important one." Like it doesn't matter if he's telling himself that or if the ghosts are telling him that. They're feeding into that sense of importance, right?
Yeah.
Whole go ahead. No.
No, I was just agreeing with you. But I did want to add like an additional scene where you kind of see that is when he is chasing. Well, he comes upon Wendy, looking at his masterpiece, and he just immediately starts pointing it at him, and he's like, "Did you ever consider my responsibilities?"
Yep.
I signed a contract.
That's like the pivotal scene in the movie, man. Like that scene right there is, for me, that is the declaration that he's the only one that matters. And that really comes at a point where, he should be thinking about his family. He should be putting his family's needs first. That I was actually talking about this a little bit with Isabel recently. So like, imagine, let's just say, for example, the ghosts actually do live in the hotel. Okay. Imagine you're there with your family, right? Mm-hmm. You're there and you're working on a novel. Okay. And that's something that you could potentially do, right? You're an academic writer. Like you could actually be in that type of situation. Okay.
Sure.
Like your son has bruises, right? And he says that he was attacked by some crazy woman in the hotel or ghost or whatever. Okay. So you're sent by your wife to go investigate. Now you actually interact with the ghost. You see the ghost. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then rather than going back and reporting to your wife, I did see it. Danny he's right. We need to get him help. We need to get him out of here. It's not safe. Mm-hmm. He gaslights his wife. Mm-hmm. Right. And he says, no, in fact, I think that Danny might've done it to himself. Right. Yeah. And then when she questions that, he flies off into a rage. And it's, again, you have another scene where he's kind of flipping out, going off the handle. And it's just, I can't imagine personally being in that type of situation. But I think that just, again, speaks to his narcissism. I think that's what's going on with him.
Yeah. And you mentioned that also in that ballroom scene, there's some potential racism.
Yeah, so that's another. So, I think that some of Jack's grandiosity you kind of have to infer from other things. So, a trait, right? Like a specific facet of grandiosity is this sense of superiority, right? Mm-hmm. And you can kind of infer that from the way Jack has that discussion about Dick Halloran when he's talking with Grady in the bathroom, when Grady's kind of like, wiping the advocat off of him. Mm-hmm. I mean, that racism, it suggests that he sees himself as superior. There's an early, the first bar scene where he's first interacting with Lloyd. He talks about man's burden. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are these little like kind of snippets where it's like, I think he probably does have this sense of superiority. That's a piece of who he is.
Yeah. And also if there are ghosts, right? If this is the supernatural thing, like, and our other discussion about the film is going to also discount the whole ghosts thing. In both bar scenes, Lloyd tells Jack, in the ballroom scene and then the initial bar scene where it's just him. He's like, can somebody give me a GD drink around here? Mm-hmm. Lloyd says to him in two different ways, both times, that his money isn't needed here. His credit's always been the best. Your cash is no good here or whatever. And both times the first time he takes it and he's like, oh, okay. All right. Look at me. And the second time he's a little confused in the ballroom. He's a little confused why they won't take cash because there's a big party going around. It's just like, that's weird. But he still puts the $20 bill, I think is what it is, neatly back in his wallet. And he's like, You know,
Of course.
he's very
Of course
matter
we're
of fact
confused
about
with
it.
this.
Yeah. Confused and then like, oh, yeah, no, I'm right. I'm good. So
Yep.
watching that scene again today, or actually watching both scenes again today with this lens that we've been putting together of narcissism, I was like, that tracks. And I had never noticed that.
Yeah. No, it's a good observation. And for me, what that might also indicate too is, Jack's perceived link with the hotel, right?
Mhm.
So like it doesn't really matter, who is buying him the drink. Like he's part of that hotel and he kind of knows it and he kind of feels and he believes it,
Yeah.
And when they tell him like, oh, you're the caretaker here, you've always been the caretaker here, and he just, it doesn't take that much for him to buy into that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But that also too, I mean, you have to think about what the Overlook itself represents. There's another early scene where the family's being shown around the hotel, and Jack's employer is explaining all the best people have stayed here, the athletes, movie stars, royalty, all the best people, and they're going around and they go to the storeroom and the kitchen, and we have all this stuff and look at all this, and it's and everything's just so grand. Like the grandeur is just in your face, the ballroom, it's, and then later in the movie, Jack says like, I feel like I've always been here, like when they were showing us around, like I felt like I knew what was around every single corner, like, you've heard of deja vu, but this is ridiculous. Like, he just it's him. Like the hotel is kind of him.
Yeah, it's like an extension of him.
Yeah.
Which with the whole ghosts thing, if he's always been the hotel, then
he's always been the caretaker. Yeah,
he's always been the caretaker. Then why did that woman trick him?
Which woman?
The dead woman.
The dead woman
is a younger
right.
naked woman, and then turns into an older woman with a water damage, basically.
I don't know. Actually, that's kind of a good question. I've never really. Okay, one of the theories that I heard recently is that maybe there are no ghosts in the hotel, and what the person presenting this theory says is that every time he's interacting with a ghost, he's actually looking at himself in a mirror. Have you heard that theory?
No, but that is That is very interesting,
isn't it?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to rewatch now. Now.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because that even actually plays to the scene where he gets locked in the cooler, right? So like when Grady is on the other side of the door and he's trying to talk to him to get him to let him out, right?
Yeah.
The other side of the door is metal. And he actually so really like he could just be talking to himself.
But then who opens the...
Well, actually, there are a bunch of theories about that too. So isn't that insane?
Yeah, that's wild, isn't it? That's totally wild. My theory, and I'm sure there's some alignment with somebody somewhere, is that it was Tony.
Yep. That's actually that is theory number 5 in the particular breakdown that I'm thinking about. Yeah, they actually say that Danny had the end of the movie kind of set up. Like he actually was planning to kill his father.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was kind of, I mean, it was just a matter of setting the ball in motion. So Danny came down and actually unlocked the door for his dad. Yeah, that's one of those theories. Yeah.
I mean, they did talk about the Donner Party.
That's
at the
right.
Very beginning of the movie.
That's right.
Right, and Danny sort of gives away some of it. He's like, "Yeah, I know all about cannibalism and what people have to do."
You mean they ate each other up?
See,
My God.
he saw it on the TV.
Oh my God.
So let's talk about this narcissism with respect to Wendy. In what many have said, both Shelley Duvall and people around her say that she had the worst experience on set. Stanley Kubrick was terrible to her, and because Jack Nicholson is a method actor, he was terrible to her too. So she had no fun while the cameras were rolling, as well as while the cameras weren't rolling. So, I mean, the terror that you get from her in that movie is palatable, I think.
Yeah.
Because, and I think it's, when you first view it, when I first saw it, I didn't know about her treatment on set and all of that. And, I thought she was scared too. I was younger, so things scared me more, I suppose. But when you watch it after, you find out that she was just like constantly terrorized.
Yeah,
that
people
her
on that.
They were terrible.
Treated
And
her like crap.
that her terror on screen is actually just like, it's real. Like, that when Jack puts his face through the door and says, "Here's Johnny," she's just like,
yeah,
but for real. I don't. People can't see me, but I did a very scared face.
It was good.
Thanks.
It was good.
I appreciate that. So you mentioned gaslighting already, and she specifically gaslights when Jack specifically gaslights Wendy pretty much throughout the entire movie, but specifically with the whole Danny incident and the bruises and sores around his neck from being strangled or attempted strangling. But then there's other issues with her relationship with Jack. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the contempt is palpable throughout the movie. Like there's a scene where she brings him breakfast, right? He sleeps in really late, and she says to him, maybe after you're done eating, you can bring me for a little walk, and he says, well, I suppose I should get some writing done, and he kind of alludes to having some trouble, like maybe he's got a little bit of writer's block. And she says, she's something to the effect of, it's just like riding a bike, once you get back into it, like you'll get it. He kind of looks at her and rolls her eyes like, yep, that must be it. And it just, just subtle little contempt like that,
Hi, hon. How's it going?
Fine.
Get a lot written today?
Yes.
Hey, the weather forecast said it's going to snow tonight.
What do you want me to do about it?
Oh, come on, hon. Don't be so grouchy.
I'm not being grouchy. I just want to finish my work.
Okay, I understand. I'll come back later on with a couple of sandwiches for you, and maybe you'll let me read something then.
Wendy, let me explain something to you. Whenever you come in here and interrupt me, you're breaking my concentration. You're distracting me, and it will then take me time to get back to where I was. Understand?
Yeah?
Fine. And we're gonna make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't don't you start right now and get the out of here?
There's another part. I think the first time he calls her, actually, so this is even earlier. He calls her to tell her that he got the job, right? She's all excited for him, and like he can't reciprocate, and he just, she's like, oh, so it sounds like you got the job, and he's just like, right. It's like, man, like you just, you're just not there, like you're just not meeting her on the same page. And those are just the subtle examples. Like, it gets so blown out of like proportion, like his contempt. So when she comes in to, I think, bring in like a sandwich or something like that, he's working on his manuscript and he's typing, and she just wants to visit him and say hi. And, she asks if, maybe she can read something when it gets to a good point, and he just absolutely blows up on her. I mean, he's just like, if I'm in here, leave me alone. And it's just a mess. Yeah. So you can just, he has obvious contempt for her. And then when he's first talking to Lloyd at the bar, he even says, he even says, he's like, she'll never let me forget what I did to our son. And it's just,
yeah,
it's awful.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, I was going to bring that up, a particular scene too. I'll go ahead and play that as well.
Hi, Lloyd. A little slow tonight, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Mr. Torrance. What'll it be?
I'm awfully glad you asked me that, Lloyd, because I just happen to have 2 20s and 2 10s right here in my wallet. I was afraid they were going to be there till next April. So here's what. You slip me a bottle of bourbon, a little glass, and some ice. You can do that, can't you, Lloyd? You're not too busy, are you?
No, sir. I'm not busy at all.
Good man. You set him up and I'll knock him back, Lloyd. One by one. White man's burden, Lloyd, my man. White man's burden. Say, Lloyd, it seems I'm temporarily late. How's my credit in this joint, anyway?
Your credit's fine, Mr. Torrance.
That's swell. I like you, Lloyd. I always liked you. You were always the best of them. Best goddamn bartender from Timbuktu to Portland, Maine. Or Portland, Oregon, for that matter.
Thank you for saying so.
I never laid a hand on him, goddammit. I didn't. I wouldn't touch one hair on his goddamn little head. I love the little son of a bitch. I'd do anything for him. Any fucking thing for him. But that bitch, as long as I live, she'll never let me forget what happened. I did hurt him once, okay? It was an accident. Completely unintentional. Could have happened to anybody. And it was 3 goddamn years ago. The little fucker had thrown all my papers all over the floor. All I tried to do was pull them up. The momentary loss of muscular coordination. Few extra foot-pounds of energy per second.
Yeah, he he talks about how, in a roundabout way, how he hurt Danny in what he calls an accident. But if it truly was an accident, I don't think he would, or Wendy would, hold it over his head, whether she was or not, right? Because we don't actually know. She's not. The only time she gives it away is when she first sees Danny with the marks and bruises on his neck, and she immediately thinks it's him. But she had previous days, and she just heard Jack tell her about a nightmare he had about chopping them up into little pieces. Like, you're telling me you had that nightmare, and then now my son, whom you've hurt before, has things around his neck. She does jump to that conclusion pretty quick, but I don't know if that would be her constantly holding it over his head.
Yeah, I just,
So he victimizes himself quite significantly.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
yes,
he's like,
definitely does.
Poor me. All I need is a drink.
I'm entitled to a drink. I need it.
Yeah,
I need it.
And we'll talk about his alcoholism in a little bit. But you had an interesting tidbit here in our notes doc. Stephen King is famously so anti this movie. And one of his criticisms was Wendy. You want to care to elaborate on that one, Sully?
Yeah. So Stephen King thinks that Kubrick's take on Wendy is incredibly misogynistic. So he actually is quoted as saying, Shelley Duvall as Wendy is really one of the most misogynistic characters ever put on film. She's basically just there to scream and be stupid, and that's not the woman I wrote about. So I have to disagree with Stephen King on that one. And now let me just quickly say, right? So Stephen King also hates academic takes on this film, right? So I kind of hope that
I can dig that.
Right. So
I'll tweet him.
Perfect. But I don't agree. I think that Shelley Duvall is acting like someone who is in an abusive relationship with a narcissist. I think that that's how people act when they've been in a relationship like that for many years. You kind of have to just put your head down and submit or face their wrath. That's just kind of that's how you survive those relationships until you can find the strength to get out, and as I see, she's certainly scared of him. She's definitely scared for her child, but I actually see her as being quite strong in the movie. She plays a critical role in saving herself and her son.
Yeah.
Right. We all know what stress, well, maybe we do. Stress kind of, it hinders your ability to think. No one's going to argue that she's not stressed out in that movie. Like no one's going to say, oh, Wendy's, she's fine. She's coping. Like, no,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like nobody's going to cope with a situation. So when she's struggling with locks and, she's kind of like, kind of stumbling around and of course she's crazy stressed out.
Come out, wherever you are.
I can't get out! Run! Run and hide! Run! Quick!
Little pigs, let me come in. Not by the hair on your chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in. Here's Johnny.
Like, of course she's going to be acting like that.
Yeah.
So the fact that she can pull it together enough, for example, to crack him with a bat, right? And then drag him into the cooler and lock him in the cooler, right? And then whack him in the hand with a knife. Like, I give her props, man, for real.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know. I just disagree that she's a totally misogynistic character.
That's fair. You know, it's hard to know because the way that Shelley Duvall just totally plays a broken person, it's hard to tell. But yeah, I do agree that she was incredibly strong in that film, and in all honesty, she's the protagonist of the story.
Yeah.
We're all rooting for her. Maybe we're rooting for Danny because he's a little boy, but we're rooting for her.
I hear you, man. I agree. I agree.
And you get the sense that their relationship is not good when they are driving, right? So you right after he calls her, it basically just fades to them driving up for the caretaking. And the contempt is there, as you mentioned, but also just like her acquiescence to everything he says. Right? He's just, or she's just, I mean, you mentioned head down. She's just gonna go, yes, dear, yes, dear. You know, she's bringing him food. She's attempting to check on his well-being. Like, she ran from like a zigzag when he was having his nightmare. She's like, I hear crying. I'm going to run, and then she like runs like from 50 yards away or whatever, to come comfort him and brings in breakfast in bed and stuff like that. Like,
no, it's really, like it's terrible, but that's, you know, I think that, I just, that is how I would expect someone to act if they were in a relationship for that much time with someone who is so deeply narcissistic. I mean, you can even pick up on, you know, how just kind of messed up she is when she's talking with the doctor after Danny's first little spell there, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, the doctor says, well, tell me a little bit about Danny. You know, when did Tony. Tell me a little bit about Tony. When did Tony show up? She says, oh, well, you know, that was probably right around the time of Danny's incident. She's like, well, what happened to Danny? Like, what happened? And then she describes, you know, oh, well, you know, it's just purely an accident. You know, it's just the kind of thing you do 100 times with a child. You know, just picked him up by the arm, yanked him a little too hard, and on this particular occasion, broke his arm. And the doctor is like looking at her with terror. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's horrible, you know? But she's just like, you know, oh yeah, it's just happens.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's I don't know. I think she's trying to protect her narcissistic husband. I think it's sad. I think it's unfortunately too the kind of thing that probably happens a lot.
Yeah, I would agree. So we're going to take a short bit of a break and come right back to it with a quick little take. So we'll be right back. Hey, listener. Thanks for sticking around this episode. I hope you're enjoying it. Anyway, I need your help in growing this podcast's audience. In past episodes, I've asked you to share this podcast with 5 of your friends. Let's keep doing that. Share this podcast on social media, especially if you really liked an episode. Share that episode. Tell 5 of your friends or family if they have an interest in film or psychology, or even better, both. Growing the audience is our goal for the second year of programming, and so we need your help to get that done. Other ways to contribute to the podcast include tips to our PayPal, found on our website, becoming a patron at patreon.com/cinemapsychpod, rocking some sweet merch from our Spreadshirt shop, and or leaving us a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. Now back to the show. All right, so one of the other notes that I wanted to bring in here is every time that I've watched the movie, especially with a psychology lens, is what is very clear to me that Jack has an alcohol use problem, and he has a bit of an anger issue. And I'm curious if I have agreement out in the ether here that everything is happening in Jack's mind. Well, for the most part, Wendy and Danny are real, but everything that happens at the hotel is not. And we are witnessing a man who has a psychotic break in some undetermined amount of time. Like you're told at the beginning when the hotel is closed, but we actually get no indication of when and how far into the, I think it was 6 months, 7 months.
Yeah,
something like that. That is closed. We don't know, and maybe it is 6 months, but
9 months.
I don't know. It could be or something like that. It could be any amount of time. All we see is snow falling and blanketing the hotel, which makes the roads impassable. That it's just like it's all a psychotic break happening at one random point. Now I know that Danny also sees visions, so that doesn't help me out in my explanation. But it's just if I was told, hey, find a character in here and assign a diagnosis to him, I would go with a some sort of psychotic disorder. I don't think I would come on MPD first. I would come with like alcohol-induced psychosis.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So one thing that I think even Kubrick himself said is that he considers it to be the story of a family that is just slowly going mad together, that they're all going insane, and that they're all having that break from reality. So they're all experiencing these hallucinations. I mean, even Wendy starts seeing ghosts at the end of the movie.
Oh, right.
So that is a possibility. But I think that one thing that is debatable is whether there's actually any alcohol in the hotel. Right. So, they say earlier in the movie that they remove all of the alcohol from the hotel for insurance purposes. Right. So unless you brought your own, it's going to be dry. And then Jack says, well, we don't drink, so that's not even an issue. Right. So unless the ghosts are actually manifesting alcohol for him to drink, I don't know if you could say it's like an alcohol-induced psychosis. I mean, maybe it is some type of psychosis, but I don't know if it would be alcohol-induced, right? But I think you raised a good point. I think it's debatable. I think another thing too, though, that's debatable is maybe it's symbolic. Maybe he's drinking in the grandeur of the hotel. I mean, he's being offered spirits by a spirit. Maybe he's just maybe drinking it in, and this is it. The other thing that like I said earlier, I heard recently that, maybe he's never interacting with ghosts because every time he's talking with one, he's sitting across from a mirror, So, I mean, then that can kind of bring you back to that whole notion of grandiose fantasy. I mean, I don't know if you've ever fantasized, getting into an argument with someone and just decimating them, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just you know what I mean? Like, you fantasize that conversation in your head. He could be doing that.
Yeah.
Like, he could be doing, you know, like he's mad at his wife, you know, so he's going to go and talk to his favorite bartender about it. And she just went, and yeah, I'm right. I'm the one, you know, and he just, that's grandiose fantasy. And he's just getting it all out there, you know, and when it's the same thing when he's in the bathroom and he's talking with Grady, he's facing the mirror, you know, but Grady is just, you're the best and you're the one. And you know that there's this person trying to interfere with the way you're bringing up your son. Maybe you should correct him. Yeah, I will do that. You know?
Yeah.
It's just, so I just, it always comes back to grandiosity for me. Like, Jack just has this, you know, he has this sense of self-importance that's just unshakable. And I think that the alcohol in that movie is just maybe metaphorical for him just letting it go. Like, he's tried for so long to hold it together, but like, he's entitled to more. You know, he's entitled to do what he wants to do, and he shouldn't have to work, and he should be part of this elite group. And that's just he deserves it. That's my take on it anyway.
I like that. I like that better than mine, because you bring up a very good point about the alcohol not actually possibly being there. He does act drunk after he drinks the Jack Daniels, though.
Maybe he's drunk on power.
He's
drunk on his own.
He's like, oh, my credit is amazing here.
I am the best.
The Overlook Jack Tell. I mean, you know, I think somebody is having a psychotic break. I think somebody is. I mean, what's the explanation then for the all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy in like as many different arrangements as one could make in typesetting and formatting?
Yeah.
The paragraph, the prose form of all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy is like the wildest one on a typewriter, no less.
I know. Yeah. No, I think that he is well aware of his lack of talent. And I think that he's being forced to confront it by being locked in the hotel with no excuse. Right? He doesn't have any excuse but to write. He says early in the movie during his interview, well, months of isolation is exactly what I want because I'm trying to write this novel, and that's peace and quiet is just what I'm looking for, right? Well, now you got it. So you have no excuse. So you need to write this grand novel, right? And he can't do it. And he sits there and he's typing away and he yells at his wife when she interrupts his thought process, but his thought process doesn't even exist. And you see him wasting all of this time. You know, and you kind of give him the benefit of the doubt earlier in the movie. You know, you see him, you know, bouncing the tennis ball off the wall and, you know, he's screwing around. He's staring at the model of the hedge maze and he's staring out the window and he looks like he's going crazy, you know, and you kind of say like, well, maybe he's got some writer's block, you know, maybe he's just kind of, but when she actually discovers, like, my husband hasn't been doing anything. Like, this is all BS. Like, he's just been writing this nonsense over and over and over again in different shapes on the page, like, you know, and then he comes in, right? And he realizes that he's been outed, right? He's a total fraud, right? So now that his grandiosity in terms of his writing ability is shattered, you see him pivot to, oh, well, my employers have placed their complete trust in me. And then that is the catalyst for the key scene in the movie. That's the bat scene. That's the scene where, you know, he says like, well, did you ever think about my needs? Did you ever think about me? It's like, I don't know, man. That's it for me.
What should be done with him? I don't that's true. I think you have some very definite ideas about what should be done with Danny, and I'd like to know what they are.
I think maybe he should be taken to a doctor.
You think maybe he should be taken to a doctor? When do you think maybe he should be taken to a doctor?
As soon as possible. As soon as possible.
You believe his health might be at stake.
Yes.
You are concerned about him. And are you concerned about me?
Of course I am.
Of course you are. Ever thought about my responsibilities?
Oh, Dick, what are you talking about?
Have you ever had a single moment's thought about my responsibilities? Have you ever thought for a single solitary moment about my responsibilities to my employers? Has it ever occurred to you that I have agreed to look after the Overlook Hotel until May the 1st? Does it matter to you at all that the owners have placed their complete confidence and trust in me, and that I have signed a letter of agreement, a contract, in which I have accepted that responsibility? Do you have the slightest idea what a moral and ethical principle is? Do you?
Yeah, I that's one of my favorite scenes in all of film, is literally the slow walk forward, her walking backward up the stairs, hit with the bat, fall down the stairs. Now I have a limp. And so I'm slowed. Yeah, it's such a good shot. And no cuts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's just one continuous shot.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, no, actually,
you're right.
No. So I think that, well, actually, I'm not really sure. I know that reaction shots of Wendy are interspersed in that, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they did Jack's scene. I don't know if they did that all in one take. That would be interesting to look into, though.
Yeah, it's such a good scene. Contract.
That I've signed a contract. Oh my God, my Jack Nicholson is terrible.
Do you know what that means?
Your Jack Nicholson is good, man.
No, it's not.
Dude, yes,
it's
it
not.
is, man. I think it's good.
I appreciate that. It's a work in progress, we'll say, as he's done acting.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Some of I don't know if you can quickly jump to a diagnosis of a personality disorder when there's an active substance use disorder. I think the substance use disorder has to be under control before you can suggest maybe this person has a personality disorder.
Gotcha.
That said, again, and this is all with the I'm not a clinician, so I don't, that's how I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I'm pretty sure that Jack has been sober for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the incident with his son, with Danny, he reports happened 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And Wendy said earlier in the movie that, well, something good did come out of the incident. He said, Wendy, I'm done drinking, and if I ever have another drop, you can leave me. And he hasn't had a drop, and he's been sober ever since. But actually, well, now, you know what? Now that I think about it, though, there might be some inconsistencies there, because I think she gives I think she might say in that scene that he actually hasn't had alcohol for like 5 months. So it might actually be less than 3 years. So I'm not sure, actually. Now I have to revisit that.
There's always, if the alcohol is real, there's always the possibility that it's ghosts.
Yeah. Yep. Well, here's another thing too.
Ghosts who can make you see things. They're hallucinogenic ghosts.
That's right. They're ghosts who can make you see things, and they can slang drinks. But you know what? But here's the thing, though. Like, I think that it's kind of both, right? Like, I think that there are ghosts in the hotel, and I think they're feeding into Jack's grandiosity. I think they're playing off of it because they're trying to drive him mad, because they're trying to pull him in to that hell. Does that make sense? They're trying to get him.
Yeah. I don't know. It still doesn't explain the last shot, though.
The
1921.
Yeah, where he's like the great. Yeah. Well, maybe that's the trap. They got him now, and now he's in the picture, and it's kind of interesting too, because in that shot, you kind of see him with the big arms, he's kind of, and he's in the front of the crowd, and he's got all these people behind him, and then it's the real grandeur. Like, he's there, like he's in now. He really is part of the hotel.
Man, oh man. If people have not been choosing, so I know some instructors have like diagnose a fictional character or whatever in like an abnormal psych class or something like that. I don't teach abnormal, so I don't use those things. But if people have not been using Jack Torrance as their NPD, then they're just missing out, because this is a gold mine. I would not have ever thought of any of this, and looking through that grandiosity lens, it is pretty confirming. It is a little bit of confirmation bias for me right now, but it's still I buy into it, because it's a little. What I like to do for movies like this is sort of evaluate, is it supernatural or is it something else, right? Or is it psychological? Because if it's not supernatural, then it's probably psychological. And of course, there are obviously truly supernatural films out there, but I like the challenge that The Shining gives in whether or not the evidence that Kubrick puts in, because yeah, he did deviate quite a bit from Stephen King's novel. Whether it is something psychological or supernatural, and there are hints for both. But that's what I think makes it so interesting to watch and rewatch over and over again. So I don't fault you for watching this so often that you could probably recite it in your sleep.
Seriously, I've probably seen it like 100 times.
Dang, dude.
Dang. Yeah, it's ridiculous, man. I watch probably a couple of times a year at least. That's weird, man. But I have a few movies like that, actually. Like I watched Shawshank Redemption like that. Like, it's Forrest Gump is another one. I watched that movie like that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, The Shining, like I said earlier, I don't think it really matters if there are ghosts in the hotel are
Right.
not.
That was my point, is that you can kind of go either way with it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. But I think that you actually raise a really good point about psychosis. And that's something that people have talked about. And, maybe the family just is kind of spiraling. I mean,
they do mention the Donner Party. I know it's like one of the dumber clues that or connections that, us viewers can make. But it is kind of on the nose.
It is. Yeah.
Yep. They didn't go as far as cannibalizing each other, but
step up. They,
I mean, they did have a frozen meat bag out there.
They did the Jaxicle at the end.
Yeah, they could have survived the rest of the winter on that meat.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case.
If only they had gone back. Because, they were on their path for freedom with that snowmobile. So they were like, or snow tractor or whatever it was. Yeah, they just, how gross would that thaw been?
Oh my God! When they find him in the summer,
yeah, right. In the middle of the maze, they find him in the middle of the maze. They're like, "What's that smell? Something died."
It's the caretaker,
and they're like trying to pinpoint where it is, where the smell is coming from. They're like, "Oh, it's in the middle of the maze. Great, let's get it." It's. No wonder the lights were on when we got here and we couldn't find the guy. Why are the doors broken in room 237?
Oh my God.
Well, this explains it.
Did you see Dr. Sleep?
Mm-mm. It's on my watch list for forever, and now that we've had this conversation, I plan to, right? Because Ewan McGregor plays Danny, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It's not a guy named Danny. Sorry, can't watch it.
Oh
no, the actor's name's not Danny. Oh.
They should have had Danny Trejo play. That would have been
amazing. Wow, Danny, you've changed. Shut up. I've got The Shining.
Oh my God, man. No, dude, check that out though, for real. Like the alcohol use disorder is key in Dr. Sleep. Like that is prominent. So that I just think even there's more to the debate about The Shining.
Okay, but obviously not made by Stanley Kubrick. So we'll have to see how it goes. I've heard mixed reviews, so I will go into it with semi-low expectations, I suppose, but with the intent for question answering.
Yep.
So I wanted to add in another little piece here that has been missing from a few episodes recently, which is the Your Thoughts segment. Yeah, it's back. And I have some Your Thoughts on Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece, The Shining, from several people in the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. These are the people that I asked specifically to let me know what kind of ideas you talk about with respect to this movie in your classes if you were going to use The Shining as a pop culture psychological concept reference. And Jason Geller added that The Shining could be couched within the current pandemic and tied to isolation and the negative effects it can have. And that's an amazing little thing. And then Molly added a screen cap from Jennifer Reich. My 13-year-old child watched The Shining tonight. Not scary, and he's unimpressed. He explains, quote, we've been home for 9 months, and we are supposed to believe that after 6 months alone with his family, he goes crazy and kills them. Another thing ruined by COVID. And if you're not familiar, Molly is a friend of the show. Now, Justine, another friend of the show, Justine Egan-Kanicki, she did the Zootopia episode. I think you could contextualize it with the themes of domestic violence and alcohol addiction, which we did, specifically the alcohol addiction, primarily, besides the obvious isolation themes pointed out by Jason. I was also thinking the discussion of how Jack and how he's always compensating in his striving to be a writer. And I think that it hits specifically at what Sully was saying here with the narcissism. It's just a function of his strive to be well regarded. And of course, it's just a great horror. It's just a great horror film. So we are a little bit behind. We are a little bit behind the times there for this being a Halloween episode, but that's all right. And then finally, Rachel Ritchie Ballerman asked if we had watched Dr. Sleep. Now, I have not, but Sully has, and he told me that it is pretty good. And so things that we could talk about with respect to both films, The Shining and Dr. Sleep, is that childhood trauma and alcoholism are major themes in both movies. And it appears that of the parts that I have watched so far in Dr. Sleep, that Danny is very much showing similar alcoholic traits as Jack did. And that just goes to show how alcohol use disorders do have a genetic component. And that is your thoughts segment. Please stick around for the rest of the episode. It's a good one. Well, I want to thank Sully Coleman for joining me to discuss The Shining.
Yeah, man.
While saying goodbye, Sully, is there anything that you'd like to plug where folks can find more about your work?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Sullivan C. That's at SULAMUNNC. And I'd also like to plug my 3 big advisors and their respective labs. Dr. Abe Rutchick, that is a common link for me and Alex. He's the director of the Social Psychology and Daily Experience Lab. Dr. Joshua Smythe at Penn State, the director of the Stress, Health, and Daily Experiences Lab, and Dr. Stephen Higgins, the director of the University of Vermont Center on Behavior and Health. I definitely recommend looking them up and checking out their lab websites, which also happen to include links to my research. And obviously, Alex, thank you very much for having me on your show. And
yeah, man.
I think everyone should share this and listen to it and just share it widely. And thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, buddy. It was truly a pleasure having you on talking about this movie when you can just rattle off, oh yeah, there's a theory about that. There's a theory about that without even flinching. So that was great fun. That's going to do it for this episode. Until the next one, thanks for listening. All right, you can stop.